Ciao everyone and welcome back to Green Wings Migration YouTube channel. My name is Eleonora, I'm a registered migration agent in Perth and the agency I manage is Green Wings Migration. Today's video is about 491 visa in the family sponsor stream. We recorded a video before about this topic, but it has generated so much interest that we decided to create a new one. So we bump it up a little bit and we make sure that nobody misses out on important information and characteristic of this visa option. Let me tell you that this visa option is very often overlooked and underestimated. And the reason being, it's a complicated visa to obtain. There are only few visas granted under this program on a yearly basis. And obviously it's a restricted visa because it requires that you have a relative who is already an Australian citizen or permanent resident. But let's go one step at a time. 491 visa belongs to the skilled visa group, where we have 189, 190 and 491. And the 491 is distinguished in two streams. One is through the state regional nomination, and the other one is when you are supported by a relative, which is the one that we're going to talk about today. Something in common amongst the four visa subclasses is that they always work based on the point skill system. So you always need to lodge an expression of interest, whether you want to migrate with visa 189 or 491. And the fact that you have someone who's already in Australia, who is supporting, who is vouching for you, doesn't necessarily give you any advantage over other people. So you always need to be invited, and you must never give for granted that you will receive an invitation. Then sometimes, obviously, the department surprises us as well, because if you look at the recent skill select invitation round in August, we did have a decent amount of people invited through visa 491. So some people decided not to lodge an expression of interest for a visa 491 because for almost a year looked like there was nothing happening in that space. And then there, out of the blue, the department invited again. As I always say, it's very unpredictable. We cannot really know what the department wants to do, what they plan to do. So potentially, if you are eligible for a visa or expression of interest, lodge it, and in the best case scenario, you will be invited. What makes visa 491 so peculiar? Two things. First of all, it's not a permanent residency visa directly. So if you are invited and if you get granted this visa, you don't become automatically a permanent resident. You go on a visa that's valid for 5 years, and during this 5 years time, you need to live in Australia for at least 3 years in a regional area of the country. And after completing your 3 years, you can then apply for your corresponding permanent residency, which is visa 191. The second peculiar thing is that in a normal or common 491 scenario, the entity that is going to support and vouch for you is the state, and that attributes to you 15 bonus points. In this case, is your relative. So a person who is, your parent, your sibling, including step siblings, and really anyone up your first degree cousin can support you in the expression of interest to obtain this visa. This support also contributes 15 bonus points on the points test. So I guess the principle that is ruling this program is, from the government perspective, you don't become permanent resident right away, but you have advantage over other candidates because your points will be higher at the very base level because we give you 15 bonus points. Something, however, which is very, very different between the 491 through the state and the 491 through the family support is the number of occupation, the list of occupations that they refer to. So if you aim for a expression of interest in the 491 through the state support, you can choose an occupation, you can have an occupation that is on the long term and on the short term and on the regional term occupation skill list. But if you aim to a 491 in the family stream, then it's only occupations on the medium and long-term skill occupation list that are actually valid. So again, it gives you more opportunity, but it can be a little bit more restrictive. Why is it structured that way? Who knows? That's just the way the department decided to create this option. Other than that, the visa really works as any other skill visa. So you should have, or you should consider at least 4 different steps. The first step is the preparatory phase, where you get your skills assessment and where you get your English testing done, essentially where you collect all the evidence, all the documents that will support the points on the points test. The second step is to lodge the expression of interest in Skill Select, declaring how many points you think you're going to score. The third step is going to be the invitation, and then you have your visa application. And it's only, remember, it's only if you are in Australia, this last step of the visa application that will generate a bridging visa that will allow you to stay in the country until a final visa outcome is available for your 491. You can include your family members, partners, and children. About children, remember that they are considered to be your dependent until they are 18. Once they turn 18 and up until they are 23, they can still be dependent, provided that you can show that you essentially pay for their education, for their accommodation, for their food, for their shelter. If they are over 23 though, they are unlikely to be considered dependent on you unless they have severe disabilities. But then again, the severe disability will potentially lead to an issue from the health point of view. And if one of the family member fails the health criterion, the rest of the family also fails the health criteria. So that's a very delicate situation to be in. You need to talk to an expert if this is your circumstances. Once the visa is granted, again, it's valid for 5 years. You have to live in a regional area of Australia. And actually something I forgot to tell you, the relative who supports you also need to be a resident in the regional area of Australia, okay? So it's a regional based scheme. The relative supporting you has to be a resident in the region, and you also need to be living in regional before being able to transition to your permanent residency down the line. Other suggestions really is just about, it's a skill visa, so you really need to try to boost your points as much as you can, but don't limit your opportunities to only lodge a expression of interest for a 491 option in the family stream, because as I said, the places available for this visa tend to be a little bit limited. So you might miss out on bigger opportunities if you don't lodge other expression of interest as well. And last thing, once you have this visa, you can change it. You can change it for a better visa, being a permanent residency visa for at least 3 years. So once you are on the 491, you have to stay on the 491. You're only allowed to change for a temporary visa, but why would you do that, given that the 491 basically allows you to do whatever you want. You can work, you can study, you can travel as long as you reside in Australia. So, and at last, couple of advice. So if you go through the process and you receive your invitation but you are overseas, remember that you could try to get a visitor visa to come to Australia and lodge your 491 visa application, so the last step of the process while you are here. Why would you like to do that? Because when you lodge a visa from Australia, the system generates a bridging visa, and with the bridging visa, you can stay here for as long as it takes to the visa to be processed, which can be quite a while. I think that as of now, October 25, the average processing time for a 491 is approximately 18 months, okay? So if you put everything into context, it's already a long process to receive an invitation. If you have to add 18 months on top of that, it's almost 3 years before you are in Australia. So try to get the visitor visa and migrate here with the visitor visa, or actually come here with the visitor visa and then lodge your 491 from here. Second thing, once you are here on your 491 that has been granted, as we said, it's a 5 years long visa, 3 years in the region, living and working. But you don't necessarily have to work in the same occupation that you were invited for. Obviously, that would be ideal because it's the principle of the program, right? So Australia is issuing visas for specific occupations because this occupation is in need. So once you come here, it would be really good if you could work in that specific job. But let's say that for whatever reason you have difficulties and you can't land that job right away, or after a while you get bored, whatever the reason is, you're not compelled to stay in the same occupation as long as you work on a full-time basis, because that will be something that you need to show once you apply for your 191 permanent residency. You want to transition to that PR. You will need to give evidence of 3 notice of assessments. Notice of assessment is the document that you receive by the Australian Taxation Office after lodging your tax return on a yearly basis, and that document must show that you have been working on a full-time basis. Okay, so that's it for today. As usual, if you have questions, write them in the box below, send us direct messages on Instagram or Facebook, or reach out via email. Our email address is info@greenwingsmigration.com.au, and if you think that you are in a position to soon be lodging an expression of interest with relative support, feel free to book a consultation with us so we can assess your situation, make sure that's the right choice for you. Till next time, thank you.